thank you, everyone. I'm really excited to be here today, and I thank you for choosing me. I know there's a lot of awesome presentations to see throughout the entire convention here, and I'm going to try to give you a lot of value today. And what we're going to be talking about, this is like my favorite topic of all the things that I get to speak on a regular basis. So we get to talk today about why video works. And I think this is so important. This is one of these parts of video that a lot of agents are ultimately overlooking. A lot of us have gotten so caught up in the pressure of video, that sense that, it's something we have to do, it's intimidating, we see other people getting thousands, sometimes millions of views in their videos, and it feels like, wow, how am I ever going to do that? And I think the problem we run into is a lot of us haven't thought about why this is such a powerful tool. So we're going to start out talking about that, right? So I'm going to share some of the insight that we've learned over the past 3 years of running business video school and working with several thousand agents all over the world. And so then, once you know why, that hopefully gives you the motivation, right? You gotta have a why behind what you're doing first. Then I'm going to give you 4 strategies. Now these 4 strategies, I'm going to give them to you in the order you should implement them, all right? So I'm not just giving you 4 random strategies. This is literally a process that you can follow over the rest of your career to gradually and naturally and comfortably implement video into your business, all right? So that's what we're going to be going over today. So to get started, the very first thing I want to talk about today is the evolution of human communication, all right? So this is a pretty big picture thing to kind of get the ball rolling here today. But I want you to think for just a minute here. Let's put video aside for just a couple minutes. I want you to think about all the different ways that we as a species talk to each other, right? There's a lot of different ways to do this. Now, all of those forms of communication, right? Let's just some examples here. You can kind of see on the screen. You got letters, right? You got phone calls, you got text messages, emails, social media posts. I mean, we're just scratching the surface right there, right? All of those forms of communication, though, were ultimately based on the original form of communication, which was face-to-face, right? So if you go back thousands and thousands of years ago, and you wanted to talk to somebody, build a relationship, get to know them, you had to do it face-to-face, right? There's a point before that where we probably grunted and pointed at that point, right? But we eventually developed words. Everything else has been based on face-to-face conversations, right? So the problem we run into, and this is something you've probably seen. I want a quick show of hands. I like to be as interactive with this stuff as possible, right? So just a quick show of hands. Anybody ever sent a text message or an email that got misinterpreted? Okay, I see some guffaws in the room, right? Maybe more than one, okay? Right? We've all been there, right? You send an email and somebody thinks you're yelling at them. My favorite example of this is social media posts that are about politics, right? So you get into the comments section below the post and everybody immediately gets really angry because the only way you can read text is the way you currently feel. So if you're a little bit angry and you read somebody's message, you think they're angry because that's what your brain just naturally assumes. The reason for that is that text lacks a lot of the aspects of human communication that we need to fully understand the other person, right? So looking at those graphics you see up on the screen there, when you have a face-to-face conversation, the one thing you really get there, you don't get with other forms of communication, is you can engage all of the senses, right? So number 1, I can hear you. We know that's important, right? We speak words, so being able to hear the words somebody's saying is obviously essential to communicating with them. But we also hear their tone of voice, right? We hear their vocal inflection. We hear which words they're choosing to emphasize. We can also see them, right? So that's a big part of communication. We can watch their face. We can see their facial expressions. We can interpret their body language, right? We can see if they're comfortable, if they're uncomfortable, how confident they feel. Now, I have the other senses listed too, because when you're in person, you can touch the other person. So you can give them a hug, shake their hand. Sometimes that's a good thing, right? You can technically smell them. Sometimes that's good. Sometimes maybe not so good, right? So that is technically there. I didn't list it. You could hypothetically taste them as well, right? I hope you're not tasting other people when you meet them, right? So they're not really dealing with that sense. But the other senses are definitely present. When you send somebody a letter or a text message, the only sense they get is part of the visual. They can read your words, and that's it. So I'm not a big fan of text messages. I'm not a big fan of emails. If somebody has a short question, hey, are you going to be here at 2 o'clock? Yes, that's a great text message, right? If I need to explain something even a tiny bit complicated, I am going to skip over text-based communication almost entirely, all right? Now, what do we have next? We have phone calls. Well, phone calls are pretty good. Phone calls were a pretty significant improvement, but we still can't see that other person. And I want to ask you a second, if you're looking at phone calls and you're comparing them to video, that we had a really good example over the past 3 years of which of those things people naturally prefer. Because for the past 3 years, and we had to do all those Zoom meetings with all the other agents in our brokerages and with our teams and all this kind of stuff, we got a little burnt out on that, right? Anybody get burnt out on Zoom over the past 3 years a little bit? You know, it's fair enough, right? Imagine if those were all conference calls. Like, that terrifies me. The idea of spending hours every day on conference calls, it's not a fun experience. I used to do that many years before we had Zoom. So what I'm getting at here is that we eventually, at this point in human history, in the evolution of human communication, have arrived at our topic today, which is video. But we all think of video as a form of marketing, right? We all know, hey, I can make these videos, hopefully I can go viral. That's great. But we need to be thinking of video as a form of communication. Right? So if there's one thing you're going to get out of this presentation, it's that. Video is a form of communication, and it is the most effective form of communication that we currently have available, other than getting in person with someone else. And in a lot of cases, we can't get face-to-face, right? We can't physically get present, so if we can't, we should default to video whenever possible, right? And I'm going to prove that to you a little bit here over the next couple slides. So there's one part of our brain that makes this essential to understand. There's actually a part of your brain, it's called the fusiform gyrus. And the fusiform gyrus is dedicated to recognizing objects. So when you see a car and you can remember that that's what a car looks like, this part of your brain is turning on. There's a subdivision of this part of your brain. It's called the fusiform face area, because I guess they ran out of fancy science terms, so it's just called the fusiform face area. And what it does is it remembers faces, right? So if you ever had an experience where you're at the grocery store or something, you see that person, you're like, I know this person, but you can't remember their name. Anybody ever had that experience? That's like all the time for me. It happens all the time, right? That's this part of your brain. It's literally easier for our brains to remember human faces than to remember names. So a lot of times if you've seen someone for even just a split second prior to that meeting, your brain will latch onto that. It'll say, hey, I've seen this person before. This is really important instinctively, right? You go back thousands of years, and we were all, hunter and gatherer types many, many years ago. If you looked across the field and you saw somebody, you needed your brain to know, hey, is this somebody that I know? Who would I know, right? People in my tribe, people who are part of my community. And if I recognize them, I can feel safe. If I don't recognize them, they might be about to throw a spear at me, right? So that's why this part of our brain exists. It's very sort of instinctual. We don't consciously think about this. This is a non-conscious part of our brain. But this is ultimately why video is so powerful. This is the reason that when we see video of another person, we start to feel like we know them. And this is automatic. It's actually called the familiarity principle. It's one of my favorite psychological effects. And all it states is the more often you see someone, the more you automatically like and trust that person, all right? But it has to activate this part of their brain. If it doesn't work nearly the same way, right? So this is the difference. So anytime you can switch out something you're currently doing, if I can replace an email with a video, if I can replace a phone call in a lot of cases even, with a video, that person is going to remember me longer. They're going to feel like they know me a lot better. They're going to recognize me in the future, and I am going to stand out next to my competition, right? So that's what we're going to see. We're already starting to see this, but over the next 10 years, we're going to see a massive transition of businesses switching to video as a form of communication. The businesses that do it first are going to suck up all the business because they are going to be the people that are easiest to remember. Right? So I want to give you a quick warning here. This next slide is going to be a little bit sad, all right? But it's going to help reinforce the idea of how this impacts our brains a little bit. So, a little bit sad, right? So anybody miss this particular gentleman on the screen? Yeah, right? Give him a round of applause, right? So that's Robin Williams. He's been passed away for a few years at this point. And I apologize to make somebody sad. Hopefully you'll think of him and you'll smile though, right? Because that's what he did for all of us. The reason I bring this up, and I know it's a little bit hard to talk about, but the reason I bring this up is that I remember distinctly, and some of you probably do too, the day I found out that Robin Williams had passed away. Because I remember I read that article, and I actually sat down for a second. And I was sad. I felt grief. I felt like somebody I knew had just passed away, like my uncle or something had just died. And that was weird. I mean, I remember sitting there thinking to myself, like, I know other people who have gotten really sad when certain celebrities die, but I had never felt that way before. Sorry about that. And so I thought about this for a while. I said to myself, why did I care? I never once met Robin Williams. I did not have a relationship with him. He had no idea who I was. But what I started to determine is what I had with Robin Williams, and what I think almost everybody in this room probably had as well, is what we call a parasocial relationship. And the reason, so parasocial relationship just means a one-sided relationship. It's what happens with celebrities, right? So we don't know, or they don't know us, but we know them. We care about them. They mean something to us, right? And so for me, this was the first time that really set in, and I was really curious about it. I said, why? Why do I care so much about this person that I've never met before? And over the years, as I've studied this more, and I've started to come to terms with what video is and how it works, it obviously dawned on me. All those weekends, I would go over to my grandparents with my cousins and watch, I must have seen Jumanji 20 times, right? Mrs. Doubtfire, another 20 times. Every single time I was doing that, my brain didn't understand what a movie was. Consciously, yes, but subconsciously, that part of my brain that recognizes human faces kept going, hey, there's that Robin guy again. Hey, there's that Robin guy again, right? And over time, it started to create the emotions that felt like I had a real relationship with him, right? And so when he passed away, that's why I cared. And it's a real thing. It's a real relationship. This is what is happening in our market today. More and more agents, more and more businesses are getting on camera in lots of different formats. It's not just really public video. We're going to talk about that next. And as a result, they're letting the marketplace, all these potential customers are getting to know them better than they're getting to know the rest of us. And those agents, we're starting to see this now, they're pulling business away from their competition because when that person thinks, I need to sell my house, the first agent to come into their mind is probably the one they're going to hire. And what do they think of before anything else? They think of your face. That's what pops into their head, right? So that's ultimately what video is about, is we're getting ourselves as close as possible to having a face-to-face conversation with this brand new technology that's never existed before in human history. That's what the opportunity is. So stop making this complicated, right? We don't need to look at this as something that's complicated. We need to look at it as a way of building relationships. And I want to use Robin Williams as an example too, because he was known by, probably about 1 billion people, if I had to guess, right? We're talking just tons and tons of people knew him, liked him, really, really respected him. You don't need that kind of exposure. Any guesses into how many people you need to have a regular awareness of you to run a really successful business? Do you need 1,000? No? 500 maybe? A lot of the research shows it's 300 people. You need 300 people to be able to recall you when the term real estate pops into their head first, and you will kill it. 300 people, that's it, okay? We don't need millions. We don't need to go viral. We don't need to be showing up on social media to do this. That is a great way to do it, but we don't have to do that. We just have to switch the way we talk to people to video, let them get to know us through that content, and stay in front of them regularly. And that's it, right? So that you don't have to think of this as this big, scary thing. In fact, a lot of us are drastically overcomplicating this. And so I want to shift gears. We're going to start to talk about these strategies next, right? I'm going to give you a lot of real powerful takeaways, things that you can implement directly into your business. But before we do that, I want to give you one quick analogy that helps a lot of folks understand kind of what they're doing wrong when it comes to video. So I want you to imagine for a second that you've never been to a gym before, all right? So I'm not saying you have or haven't, but just imagine you've never been to one. You go into the gym for the first time, you look around, and you find the biggest, strongest person in that gym who's lifting the gigantic weights and doing the complicated workouts, and you go, oh, that must be how you get in shape. That must be how you exercise. You go over next to that person, you try to pick up the same weights, and you immediately tear something, right? That's what would happen to me, right? Because you're not prepared for that, right? That's a very complicated workout. That's a lot of weight to pick up. It's very hard. It's very complicated. Most of us would look at that and go, yeah, that's crazy. I wouldn't do that. I would walk in and I would talk to a trainer and they'd show me a couple workouts and I'd start really simple. Well, this is exactly what most folks are doing with video. We are seeing other agents who are making the most complicated kinds of video. We're looking at videos that went viral because they were that good. And we're saying, I guess that must be how we use video. I guess that's what I need to do. And that's really hard, right? So I know a lot of agents that 3, 4, 5 years ago said, I need to start doing something with video. Man, I'm starting to feel some pressure. I know I got to start doing this. And they still haven't started. And the reason is that they're looking at those videos and they're thinking that that's where they should start. And that's that's the complete opposite. It's the complete extreme. It's the most complicated thing to possibly do. So what we're going to focus on here next is starting simple, right? What's the most basic form of a video you can possibly make? How do you make this so easy for yourself that it's not scary at all? It's not intimidating at all. It's something that you almost can't help but do. And the way we do that is we start with the most basic, the simplest, the easiest kind of video to possibly make. So I'm going to show you what in my opinion at least, is the easiest video here in just a second. But I did want to ask real quick, and you can just sort of shout out some ideas. Any guesses? So if I were to say to you, I want you to start with the most basic kind of video you can make, what would you guess that might mean? Yeah, so just shout them out. I heard TikTok, walkthrough of a house, okay? So some pictures in a video, kind of a slideshow. Yeah. An intro video, just sort of explaining who you are, what you do. All right. Any other thoughts? All right. I heard it. Say it again. Birthday video messages. So, like I said, you can debate this, but in my opinion, that is the easiest video to possibly make. And when we say birthday messages, I literally mean a video that is meant for a single person. This is not being posted on their Facebook wall. It's not something you're recording and sending to a bunch of people. You are saying happy birthday to somebody you already know, right? This is not a stranger. It's somebody you have a relationship with. And you're talking for maybe 10 seconds, right? So I'm just curious, quick show of hands here. Would you be willing to send one of your closest friends a 10-second video message to say happy birthday? Who would be willing to do that? All right, good. Hopefully everybody raised their hand. Seems like y'all did. So that's great, right? That is where you should start. It's the simplest kind of video. Now, here's the question. I get it, right? Well, I want to do the thing that's going to make me money, right? I want to actually drive my business. I mean, if I wish people happy birthday, is that really going to do that for me? And the answer is yes. The crazy thing here is that we've done a lot of this, right? Like we work with thousands of agents. We test a lot of things. The fastest route to an ROI when it comes to video is one-to-one video messages, and birthday videos tend to be the most impactful. The reason is that they will not forget about this video, all right? Now, in another 5 or 10 years, if everybody's sending birthday video messages, it won't quite stand out the way it does today. But today, people will remember the 10-second happy birthday video you sent them for a year. I've had people tell me, the year later, I'll forget to do it, right? And they'll send me a message like, hey dude, where's my birthday video, right? A year later, it was a 10-second video and they remember it a year later. That is mind share, right? That's what this is all ultimately about, is that if I show up in front of somebody on video celebrating what for most people is a very exciting day for them, right? There are a few folks who don't like their birthdays, but most people do, right? So it's pretty risk-free. We're not doing anything that's going to backfire. They are going to think of me later. And so then 2, 3, 4 weeks later when they think, you know what, I got to move. I just got that job offer, right? Or I got to move to a new school district, I'm having a kid or whatever it is, the first person they're going to think of is you because they saw your face, right? We have 100, 200, 300 people writing on our wall saying the same thing. I will not remember any of those people. 1 or 2 people send me a happy birthday video, it's 10 seconds long, and they stick in my mind. And remember, that's because in their non-conscious brain, it feels like you stopped by and said hello on their birthday, right? It feels like you had the same interaction with them that the more intimate relationships had. It feels like you're part of their core group of friends. And that is very powerful, right? So there's benefit, and it is very simple to get started. So I always tell folks, look, when you first start using video, and even if you have already started, but you're not sending video messages, go back to that place, start sending video messages, and never stop again. And this is the most impactful thing you will ever do with video, all right? Now, that is a promotional approach, right? I mean, and I want to be clear here. You don't have to say you're a real estate agent in the happy birthday video. I will share, one of my students actually gave us an idea that I hadn't thought of, so I'll share it with you. She said her technique is she goes to her car and she says, hey, I just stepped out of a showing I was doing because I saw it was your birthday and I wanted to say happy birthday. And then she says happy birthday, right? So that little subtle I stepped out of a showing is how she reminds them that she's an agent. And she had somebody say, oh, I didn't realize you were an agent. We need to talk, So if you want to do that, you can, but I wouldn't do anything any more promotional than that, right? So start there. Start with happy birthday videos. Do that. Here's the key. Do that as long as you need to get comfortable on camera. You don't have to do anything else. You don't have to do this for a week and then say, now I got to get on TikTok. No, you don't have to get there, right? Think about this way. The average person has, 1,500, average agent, maybe more Facebook friends. And if you don't, that's okay. It's not a big deal. But let's say you have let's say it's just 500. Let's say you have only 500 Facebook friends, right? If you said happy birthday to every single one of them, you'd have about 1.5 a day to say happy birthday to. Let's call it 10 a week, right? It's going to take you maybe 10 total minutes. It's not much work. And that over the course of the year is 500 people who are thinking about you much more than they were before, right? That will, on its own, drastically impact your business. Now, if you want to get past that, you say, okay, I got the happy birthday thing down. I want to do something a little more complicated. I want to do, use video in other ways. Well, obviously, there's going to be plenty of other opportunities. I would stick with one-to-one video messages for a while, though, okay? So next thing we're going to do is we're going to look at opportunities to say congratulations, right? To do a little bit more complex types of video messages. Then we're going to ask for referrals. I'll tell you a case study here in just a second that might blow your mind in terms of how many referrals and how much business you can get just from asking through video. Now, once we get beyond that, I want you to think about video as a form of customer service. All right, now this is a big one. If you're going to take anything away from this presentation, this is one I'm really passionate about, which is that when I put a video of myself in front of another person, they are more likely to understand me. Right? So if I'm talking about something complicated and I do it through video, they will comprehend the information at a higher level. If I'm talking about something emotional, right? Like their offer got rejected and I gotta let them know, right? They will feel more empathy through a video. So when we communicate through video messages, that person feels like they're getting better customer service. It also helps that they probably don't like the idea of being on camera themselves, and so they feel like you're doing something that's a little bit more vulnerable, and they appreciate that as well, right? So think about these opportunities during the transaction. Where can you update somebody with a video message, right? The more of this you do, the more practice you get, the easier the public-focused video will become, right? I'm just about to get there, but yeah, great question, right? How do we send this stuff, right? Well, first thing I'm going to recommend is you want to use Facebook Messenger. So for the birthdays, right? Facebook literally shows you whose birthday it is. If you open that on your phone, that menu and the notifications of the birthdays, you can look right now if you want to, just so you know how it works. In that list of birthdays, next to each person's name is a messenger button. Right? It's literally built in there for you. So you just click on the message button. It opens a Facebook Messenger chat with that person. There's a camera button inside of that chat. You click that. Now your camera's turned on. You hold the button down for up to 20 seconds. You say happy birthday. You let go, and you click send. Right? So that's 5 or 6 steps total. That's it. Right? So that's where I would start because there's nothing. You don't need any other additional tools, anything like that. Now the next step, when you start to get into, for instance, transaction updates. There's a little bit of a catch here when it comes to texting or emailing a video. And the reality is, in most cases, just go ahead and send it. So if you want to attach it to a text and send it, that's better than nothing. But you ever run into an issue where if you send a text between types of phones, right? So like Android to iPhone, iPhone to Android, a lot of times the video gets compressed. And so the quality is much lower. It can be harder to understand what you're saying, and it can be kind of hard to see. So that's the only sort of caveat you got to keep in mind is that if you're texting a different device, you might want to use a third-party tool. So I've got a couple of them listed here, and I am curious. So BombBomb in particular really specializes in the real estate industry. So how many of you have used BombBomb? Just quick show of hands. All right, so we got kind of a spattering in here. Good. So BombBomb is a great option. If you have it, that'll work. It's going to allow you to create a video. The one thing these tools do that's really cool is that they're going to create the video. They're not going to put it into the text or email. It stores it on their own server, on their own website, and that means that it's always going to get delivered in full quality, right? The other thing those tools do, BombBomb and this other one, Vidyard, that I'm a personal, so sort of my bigger option there, what they do is they take the first few seconds of your video and they turn it into a preview clip. So some of you have probably seen this, right? You'll get like an email and there's somebody like waving at you, or they've got like your name written on a sign. Like I send these videos all the time. And so what that does is it shows that it's you. It's not just some stranger sending them a link that they have to click on, and you can also incorporate their name into it. So if you need to convert leads, I mean, this is a killer way to convert leads. You send these little video messages, you take a little whiteboard, you write the lead's name on the whiteboard, and you smile and you wave into the camera at the beginning of the video, and then you deliver your message. You can put the whiteboard down after a couple seconds. The reason you do that is now the preview has their name in it. And it's just 3 seconds, the first 3 seconds of the video, and it loops over and over again. There's no sound. So they can't hear anything. It's a GIF. You know, it's the setup. It's a little preview GIF. So they're going to see their name. They're going to feel confident that they know who's sending the message because they just signed up on your website in the past few minutes or few hours. And they're going to click on that video. And as soon as they watch you, they hear their name, and they're seeing your face. Now you are real. Now they have a relationship with you. Now they're going to remember you. Now the next time they see your name, it's going to mean something to them. And if they're out there signing up on different websites, you'll be the only agent that's actually real to them. Everybody else is just going to be a website and a name, right? So that's sort of a way to use it in terms of lead conversion. So I do recommend looking into Vidyard or potentially BombBomb as an option there. So just to drive the point home just a little bit here, this is Carla, one of our students. And so Carla, she has one of my favorite case studies of doing this. Carla was experienced with videos. This is not the first time she did it. So what Carla did is she recorded a little video message, and this was back when we had like the toilet paper shortage, and then we had the housing shortage, and all, you know, a lot of shortages lately, right? So she made a little cute joke about the toilet paper shortage, and she compared it to the current housing market and said, look, I've got a bunch of buyers, and they're having trouble finding a home. So if you know anybody who's at all considering selling their home in the next year or so, can you please introduce them to me? Because they or you could be a hero to this buyer who is looking for a home, right? It's a pretty simple message, and you can tweak that to work in pretty much any market, because the basic message is, I have buyers, they're looking for a property, can you help me find a property for them, right? She records this video, she sends it to 75 people. These are all people in her existing sphere of influence. They're not strangers, she has a relationship with them. She probably thought they were already thinking about her plenty, right? 75 people. What's crazy to me is she gets responses from about 35 of them that all say the same thing, which is, hey, I'm not thinking about selling my house right now, but I'm going to ask around and see if any of my family and friends can help you out. This is a promotional video. She's asking them to give her some business, and half the people she texts are like, yeah, I'm going to go do that for you. I've never sent any sort of marketing message that got half of my audience to respond and say, yeah, I'm going to go market for you. That's pretty cool. Now on top of that though, and probably more important, she set 7 listing appointments from texting 75 people. 1 canceled, she did 6. 2 of them listed with her immediately, and the other 4 wanted to, but they just weren't ready, so those became nurtures. All 4 of them will probably end up closing. So she's probably going to do anywhere from 4 to 6 listings off of 2 hours of work, communicating with people that already knew her, right? People that should have already called her and listed their house, but because it was a video, it meant something more. It meant something real, right? It felt like a face-to-face conversation to them, and they took it seriously, and they responded. I mean, this is what kills me, is that you can send a text or an email that everybody ignores and then say the same words into a camera and send it again and get a bunch of responses just because it feels more real, right? That's what this is ultimately all about, is want to show up in front of people in a way that feels real. So this is the first strategy, and we're going to move on to the other ones here in a second. But there's obviously a lot of benefits to starting with one-to-one video messages and then building on that over time. By the way, don't stop sending one-to-one video messages. In fact, a lot of you will probably eventually kind of get addicted to it because it's so much more effective, right? So you want to keep doing this. So it's going to build your relationships, right? It's going to lead to more business. It's going to save you time. So not initially, when you first get to doing this, it's going to take more time than you're used to. But I'll tell you right now, if you're going to write a 3-paragraph email with a little bit of detail in it, you're going to want to make that a video. It's a lot easier to talk for a minute or 2 into a camera than to write something that's 3 or 4 paragraphs long that somebody's not going to misunderstand, right? And I have examples of this. I'll send something and like, what are you talking about? And I just reply with a video saying the exact same thing. And they're like, oh, that was great. Now I totally understand you, right? So that's a huge opportunity for you. And then ultimately, my favorite part of starting here is that it's low pressure, but it gives you practice. So if you felt uncomfortable with how you look or sound on camera, send a bunch of video messages and that will go away. It's going to become a much more natural thing for you to do over time. All right, now as I go through this, I am going to do a couple sort of tips and tricks on how to make a better video. So I want to go over this one real quick. So everybody take your phone out for just a second, because we're going to do a little bit of a hands-on demo. And I want you to turn your selfie camera on for me. I'm using my phone to record, otherwise I would demonstrate for you, right? So turn your selfie camera on. You want to be able to see your face on the screen. And what I want you to do is I just want you to sort of keep looking at your face, and I want you to move around a little. So sort of over the right side, move over to the left, tilt your head up towards the ceiling, tilt down a little bit. And as you're doing that, I want you to think about where you look your best. Where do you feel like you looked pretty good versus bad? Because some are better than others, right? And if you feel like it's bad, no matter what you do, I'm sorry, I can't do much for you there, right? But I will tell you right now, this is not a good room for video. Now, quick question, where did you look your best, if there was a best? All right, when your camera's up like this. Anybody have any guesses why? I mean, it's on the screen at this point, right? So you can always cheat. You can just read that, right? But yeah, it's because of the light, right? The only lights that are really in this room are above us, right? Well, if you look at my two pictures here, my top picture is me standing underneath a standard ceiling fan light, right? Just in a normal room, there's a light above me just like we have in this room. And look at all those shadows on my face. One of the things we tend to overlook is the direction the light is shining is what creates shadows. So if the light's shining from above me, it's going to create shadows on my face. Now we get used to that when we're just sitting here in a room because that's where the light is always, right? So we just sort of tune it out. But as soon as you point a camera at your face, all of a sudden you notice it. The second picture here, the only difference, I'm in the same room and the lights are actually turned off and I'm standing in front of a window on a cloudy day. It's not really sunny out. I think the blinds are even closed, but there was just enough ambient light coming through the window that look how much difference there is. I was only like 3 feet, middle of the room versus 3 feet over in front of a window, and that's the effect that has. Now, in all fairness, I should have made the same face in both pictures, right? Because that would have been more of a proper comparison. But, you get the idea. You can see the creases, especially in my forehead. In the first picture, they're very obvious. Second picture, they sort of go away, right? That's the number one thing that'll make you dislike the way you look on camera is the direction the light is shining, right? So that's all you got to worry about is just face the source of light. Now, that's part of why a room like this is so bad for recording videos, right? Because there's no other source of light. It's only above us, and if we were to turn those off, it would probably be pretty much pitch black in here, which is not good, right? So what we could do in this kind of environment, if you wanted to record a video, which I highly recommend, record like a little takeaway video from the event today, but go outside and stand in front of one of those windows in the hallway, and you'll look substantially better, right? You don't need equipment. So this is not something where you have to run out and buy a ring light or anything like that. You can just start with windows and you will look substantially better, right? So the next time you're on a Zoom meeting, this is one of my pet peeves. Somebody's on a Zoom meeting, there's a window right behind them and I can hardly see them because the window's really bright and their face is really dark. They should just turn 180 degrees, right? Face the window, put the camera, the computer in that case, between yourself and the window, and you will look substantially better. If you want to, eventually you can invest in some lights, but the main thing you got to remember is you always want to have the light source pointing at you from the same direction the camera is pointing. If you do that, you're going to look a lot better. Let's talk about audio for just a second too. This is another thing that a lot of people struggle with. So the main thing you have to worry about when it comes to your audio, and this is important because they've actually found if your audio is hard to understand, someone will stop watching your video sooner than if you're hard to see. So if it's really grainy and the video looks really bad, but I can hear you clearly, I will actually watch that video for longer, right? So audio is super important. Number one, just don't be too far away from the camera. Maybe less than 5 feet, you're probably going to have pretty good audio. If you get much further than 5, sometimes even 3, you're going to hear that echo, right? So like especially a room like this, there's sort of a lot of reverberation. You're going to hear that echo in the recording, and that becomes a real big distraction. So if you ever hear that, just get a little bit closer to the camera. Or if you need to, this is where using a microphone can come in, right? Obviously, I've got a microphone on right now, right? So that's what we might want to look into. These are called lapel microphones, or lavalier is sort of the more technical term. But if you look up lapel mic, you will find these for about $10 on Amazon. You can buy one that plugs directly into your phone model. It's probably the easiest way to go, right? So you don't need that right away. Test your phone first. Test your computer. See if the computer you're using will record good audio. And then if you need to, there are some options available for you. Okay, now we're going to move on to strategy number 2, right? So at this point, we're going to have some experience. That's what's kind of cool about this is if we do it in this order, we're going to feel pretty good on camera. So now I want you to scale yourself using video. So what I mean by this is that there's all kinds of opportunities in a given day, in a given week, where we tend to say the same things, right? You get a new customer, there's probably certain things you're going to say to that client that you're going to say to every new client, right? If you have a team and you onboard a new agent, there's probably certain trainings you're going to put them through, there's certain conversations you're going to have. Well, why not make those into videos? And this doesn't mean we eliminate those conversations altogether, right? If we're doing training, we're going to have them watch the training video and then we can follow up and have a conversation with that person afterwards. But if we do this, there's a couple benefits here. Number one, when we sit down and record our answer to something like a frequently asked question, it's going to be the best answer we've ever given, right? We're going to prepare a little bit, we're going to think it through, we're going to structure that. And then, now every time I get that question, I'm sending that person the best answer I've ever given to that question, right? I can even put it in front of them before they ask the question. I can say, hey, I've got a web page with 10 of my most frequently asked questions. I answer them all through video, so it's really easy to understand the answer. Go ahead and check this out before we have our first meeting. This is the kind of stuff people tell their friends and families about, right? They go, man, I hired an agent and they sent me all these videos and they taught me about the entire process and I feel like I already know them. This is really cool, right? That's how you generate more referrals. You give people a wow type experience, right? So that's what we want to do. I want to think about where are we having the same conversations, where are we repeating ourselves, and can I record a version of that I can then share with people? I mean, talk about reducing confusion. Talk about saving yourself time, right? Talk about being able to be in front of more people more often, but this is still not public. Now, you can use these videos publicly, right? You could take an FAQ video, post it on social media, and say, hey, look, here's my, this question I get a lot. Here's my best answer to it, right? But these are really meant for internal use. So you're still not performing. This is still not something we have to go out in public and feel uncomfortable about. We're just going to put it in front of our clients. We're going to put it in front of our maybe referral partners, our employees, and they're going to be able to learn and gain experience and whatnot from that, right? Over time, this will save you a ton of time. You're going to deepen relationships with people, and you're going to help them learn, and you're going to educate them a lot faster. And that's really, really some cool stuff here. So one thing you're going to want to think about when you get to this level is you're going to probably put a little bit more polish on these videos, right? So number one, I would recommend that these are maybe scripted or at least bullet pointed, right? This is a pretty important answer you're giving to somebody. You want to make sure it's fairly polished. So you might want to use a teleprompter app. There's a couple that we suggest. One is called Big View, BIGVU. That's a good option for you. There's also Prompt Smart Pro. Now, if you're going to use a teleprompter, number one thing you got to do is you have to rehearse your script. If you don't like using teleprompters because you feel like you sound scripted, just remind yourself that a lot of things like newscasts are scripted, right? They're reading off a teleprompter, but they don't sound scripted because they're familiar with the material. When you sound scripted, it's because you're reading the words on the screen and you're focused on trying to understand the words. If you know the words, that won't come across that way. They work more as a reminder, right? So practice is important if you're going to be scripted. You can still use a phone. You don't have to worry about using any sort of fancy camera. Just think about if you're going to do vertical or horizontal, right? That's going to depend on where the video goes. If it's going to be posted on YouTube, something like that, you probably want to do horizontal. If it's going to be texted to the person, that kind of thing, then you're going to go vertical. Now, on the editing side, this is one of my favorite things to talk about because I hate editing videos, okay? It's grown on me a little bit. It can be a little bit more fun nowadays, but it's very tedious. It's quite a process, and especially if you want something a little more polished, it's that much more work. If you like the idea of being a part-time videographer as a hobby, edit your own videos. If you don't want a hobby to, as a videographer, just pay someone else to edit them. You can find folks online, like on Fiverr and things like that. They'll edit a video for like $10. I mean, it can be extremely, extremely affordable. So don't let that be your reason you're not doing this, right? So if you don't like editing, just simply get the video over to somebody and they'll take care of it for you.
Recommendations on editing software?
Well, I'll tell you one. I'll give you two, actually. CapCut, C-A-P-C-U-T. That is a phone-based video editor. And then on the computer, there's one called Kapwing, K-A-P-W-I-N-G. A lot of weird names in the video space. So you almost have to spell them out every time, right? But K-A-P-W-I-N-G. What I love about Kapwing is it's cloud-based, so you can actually work on a video on one device and then work on it on another device from the same place, right? So it actually keeps it on the internet for you, and you can access it from anywhere. Both of those are really powerful. So moving on, that's the end of the second strategy. At this point, if you think about what you're doing with video in your business, if you implement these two strategies, You're talking one-on-one to people, and you're also scaling yourself. You're saving yourself time. You're communicating with more people more often, and it's not using up any more of your time. You're already in a place where your business is growing, right? You're getting more referrals. You're getting a lot more repeat customers if you've been in business for a few years, right? Because people are actually remembering you now. And so at this point, we're already getting a lot of benefit from video, but we're not doing anything that's public yet. Right? So this is, I think, I want to kind of pause here. And actually, let me do this because I've got to, let me go over, I'll come back to this slide. I'm going to jump ahead for a second. I'll put this up on the screen while I talk about it in case you want to grab access to this mini course. There's only so many tips I can give you in this 1-hour presentation. So this mini course has a bunch of our additional tips on video, like what to talk about in your videos, things like that. So if you want to go ahead and grab it, I'll leave it up there right now. But before I go to the next tip and I talk about being compelling on camera, I want to point something out, which is that if you use these two strategies, you are not doing anything that is exposing you publicly, all right? Because we're going to get to some public stuff next, obviously. And so if you focus on this stuff, you could be here for 6 months, 12 months, maybe even a couple years, and still get so much benefit from video that you don't necessarily have to do anything else yet, right? So I really encourage you to think about that as you're going here. So let me come back to this one real quick. So a couple quick tips on being more compelling on camera, and actually we have even more of this in that mini course, so if you do download it, you'll get some more advice here. This is something you're going to work on your entire career. I've been making videos for 6, 7-ish years at this point, and I'm still working on being more compelling on camera. The only thing, I'm going to give you a little bit of an exercise you can do here. This is actually kind of fun. So what I want you to do, and we won't do it right now because it'll probably get too hectic, but what I want you to do when you get home later is take your phone out, go to a selfie video, and record yourself, right? And I want you just to pick one sentence, something like, I'm the best real estate agent in all of Las Vegas, something like that, right? You're never going to show it to anybody else, so it doesn't have to be anything fancy. And I want you to say that sentence 3 times. The first time, I want you to say it in a way that you feel is really compelling, right? Really engaging, lots of energy, right? Then I want you to do it a second time, and I want you to be kind of ridiculous, right? I want you to be like over the top and like you're like a TV personality or something. And then the third time, I want you to do your best Billy Mays OxyClean infomercial impression, all right? Some of you remember Billy Mays, right? I loved Billy Mays, man. That guy he talked about compelling on camera, right? So I want that third one to be ridiculous. And then I want you to watch all 3 and be honest with yourself about which one you like the best. And I'm not going to tell you which one you're going to like. Some of you are going to have different answers than others, but that's a great way to determine what level you need to put into the camera in order to get what you want out of the camera, right? Because the camera definitely cuts down our enthusiasm. All right, so let's go on to strategy number 3 and 4 here to wrap things up, and if we have time, I'll take a question or two at the end here. Strategy number 3 at this point, this is where most people will be going, okay, where is TikTok? He's got to get to TikTok, right? I mean, it's all about TikTok nowadays, right? We're still not there. I don't actually think you need to be on TikTok at this point in this process, right? Strategy number 3 is to build a marketing funnel with video. Now, this is where you're going to start to be in the public eye. This is where you're going to be putting your videos in front of other people, but you're going to have months, if not years of experience already. That part will not bother you anymore. So if you're looking at this going, oh man, marketing videos, that sounds kind of scary. Well, it might today, but when you're done with the first 2 strategies and those are fully implemented in your business, that part won't be intimidating. So what we do here, it's really simple. We're going to make 3 videos to get started. The first is an awareness stage video. My favorite version of awareness stage videos is a community video. So let's say that you work with first-time home buyers, right? So it's people that are probably a little bit on the younger side. They're probably still enjoying, going out and having some fun with their friends on a regular basis. They probably don't have kids yet, that sort of thing. And so if that's the case, maybe I make videos about the best local happy hour deals at all the bars in town, right? Just a random example for you. But the idea is I want to show people something that they already know and like. This is something I got wrong. When I first started making video, I thought the idea was to always show people new stuff. Oh, I'm going to show you something you've never heard about, right? Like the secret, the secret gem that you've never heard about, right? The truth is you want to show people stuff they already really like, because as soon as they see you in a place or establishment that they already really like, they associate you with it, right? So if I go out to what ends up being their favorite local restaurant, and I'm talking about how great that place is, the people who see that are going to go, oh, who is this person? Who's this Nick guy? He and I obviously have something in common because he likes to go to the same places that I do, right? That's a great awareness stage video. Does not necessarily have to have anything to do with real estate. right? So you're just showing people that you're a part of the community and you're part of it in a way that they already like, right? You're tying yourself to those positive feelings. Then we get to consideration. This is where people are going to start to think about maybe considering you as their realtor or as their agent, right? And this is where we're going to make a video that's going to be about business. So maybe we have a testimonial. Maybe we have a case study, right? Maybe we're going to start to talk about stories and examples from our experience in the real estate industry that are going to resonate with that audience. My favorite version of this is a testimonial from a client, because it's not me, it's somebody else saying how great I am, right? That's very compelling. And so if I had seen your first video and I said, man, that Nick guy, he really likes the same things I do, I should try to keep seeing his content or whatever, right? Then I see somebody else talking about how great you are as a real estate agent. Okay, I didn't know Nick was an agent, but that's good to know. It sounds like he does really good work. Third video then is just a call to action of some kind, right? An invitation to a meeting, an offer to come to an event. Maybe it's something they can download, right? But it's going to ask them to take action. That's what conversion is all about, is action, right? So that's the last of these 3 videos. If you do this right, you can use a delivery method of email, send the 3 videos in a row, or you can use targeted ads. It's really easy to do on Facebook and YouTube, and you just show them in that order. And so what happens is they meet you with the awareness video, they see how great you are at business with the consideration, and then that last one is that call to action, that invitation, and not all of them, but some of them will be ready to take that step, and then we just turn that on, and it runs forever. And I hear people talk all the time about organic social media. I want to make this stuff and I put it out there for free and I'm going to get business results. You should absolutely be doing that stuff, right? It's free attention. Why not? But when we talk about these funnels, this is going to be something we're going to spend a little bit of money on. We're going to pay to put these ads in front of the right people. We're going to target our ideal customer. And if we do this right, these stay on forever. When we need more leads, we increase the amount of money we're putting into the ads. And if we get too busy and we can't handle the business, which is probably a good thing, right? We turn down the frequency. So you literally build yourself a little dial you can turn up and down when you want more customers, right? Which is a pretty cool thing to have in your business at that point. So if you think about where people are at this point in this experience, they see 3 videos of you, they hit your database, they start getting video messages from you, they already know who you are, they already have a sense of trust built with them, right? You think you're going to convert more of those folks? You think you're going to have better relationships with some of those customers? It's going to lead to more repeat business, more referrals? Absolutely, right? Because they know you, they have that intimacy with you. So at this point, we're going to get to the very final strategy, and I'm sure a lot of you knew where this is going. This is when we get to the social media stuff. And I like to end here, and I like to emphasize that, heck, when we get to social media, there is so much you can do, and that's part of why it's overwhelming, right? Because there's so many different examples, so many different ways we can approach this, and it's really hard to know which one of them you should focus on. But if this is the destination and not the beginning of the journey, you're going to know exactly what to do with social media. You're going to have gotten so much feedback by this point. You're going to have so many people already following you, so many people looking at your videos. You're going to have so many reps on camera that this is going to be substantially easier at this point. So if you're one of those folks that has drug your feet a little bit to do anything with video yet, just follow this process. This is what we teach all our students, and they love it, right? A lot of them are completely relieved. They go, okay, wow, this is a lot less complicated to get started, and they get here. They really do. They get to a point. We do these challenges where they make their very first social media video in some cases, and it's a lot less work, and it's a lot less intimidating. So there's a lot of things you can do here. What I will emphasize is something I basically said the whole time. Keep it simple, right? Start out with very basic videos. They don't need to have a bunch of editing. They don't need to be elaborate skits or sketches or anything like that. You just got to get the ball rolling. And my favorite version of social media videos, and these won't actually move, but there's some screenshots of some stuff we've made, is again the local focus stuff, right? So especially these far right 2 examples, those are 2 videos that I made, and then we've got one of our partners, Jeff, over there with some content examples as well. One of these was a 6-second story video. I just posted it to my Facebook stories. I was at an antique shop. I literally held up a vase and went like this. And then the camera panned over. It was very dumb. I had people sending me messages about it. Like, oh, I've been to that shop, right? Because again, they saw something they recognized and they wanted to engage as a result. It doesn't have to be complicated, right? That literally took 6 seconds to make, maybe a minute to post, and I got in front of a few hundred people. It's a pretty good trade, right? The second one over to the left of that one is a little more complicated. It was a short reel that we made. We went out to a little food festival, an Italian themed food festival in a local city, made a little highlight video of it, some shots of the food, some shots of the booths, put it together, threw it out there, same effect, right? People saw something that they recognized, that they already had positive feeling toward, and they associated that feeling with me. So it's very simple stuff, right? We don't need to make this complicated, but I will emphasize you do need to be in these videos, right? If you're not on screen at all, you're going to lose some of that benefit of making the content because, again, this is your logo, right? Our face is what people will remember. We need to show up a little bit at least in the video content, and if we do, we are going to get the results we're looking for. All right. Yeah.
What's the time limit on that? What should we not go over? Because it seems like some of these could be complicated.
Well, let me give you a rule to follow. There is really no rule in terms of how long videos can be, but what I do like to recommend is if you are showing up in front of people for the first time on video, or if you're showing your videos to a new audience, they should be as short as possible. Right? So we're talking 10, 15, 20 seconds, those really kind of shorter TikTok style videos. The reason being that when somebody doesn't know you, there's no familiarity, right? So they don't necessarily trust you yet. They'll give you 10 seconds to give you a try, and if they like what they see, they'll come back for longer content, right? So that's the way to think about it. When you're first starting short, let them get to know you. As they get to know you, you can go longer, longer, longer. One of my favorite forms of really long video is live. So if you're the kind of person that's willing to get on camera and go live, you can go 20, 30, 40 minutes. It gives people a chance to have back and forth types interactions with you, but it's a more of a destination than necessarily a place that I would start. All right, so to sum it all up here, and then I think we have 2 or 3 minutes for questions here at the end, but to sum it all up, remember, do it in this order and don't stop. Don't stop doing strategy number 1 when you start strategy number 2, but start with one-to-one video messages, birthday videos being the easiest. Then build up your exposure, build up your engagement with your existing customers by scaling yourself with video. Then build your video marketing funnel, which pushes people into that system you already have up and running. And when all that is built out and it's running and it's getting you a ton of business, then you can experiment with the social media video, which will feed all those new people into that system, which will then pull them in, convert them into customers, and make them lifelong, loyal customers continuing to refer to you and working with you in the future. All right? Yeah, thank you so much.